The Starlink Mini has been a game changer for van life, but after the recent price increase is now the time to cancel your subscription. After traveling with our Starlink Mini for 3 years in both our campervan and overlanding setup, it's time for a change. Today, we're going to show you what the alternatives are, and we're going to help you decide whether the Starlink Mini is actually worth it for your style of travel. The latest price hikes might have been small, but considering how expensive the roaming packages already are, it just makes you feel like a frog in boiling water. Maybe Elon Musk is hoping that people won't notice a small little drip of price hikes as he becomes a trillionaire. All the roaming plans have increased in cost by $10 a month. This means the unlimited roaming service now costs a whopping $175 a month or $2,100 per year. Even if you don't use your Starlink Mini all the time, you're still getting slapped with a price hike. Until recently, it was free to pause your subscription, and it was a great feature. But then Starlink changed that to be a standby mode, and they then charged a fee of $5 a month for it. Just a few months after that fee was introduced, it's now been doubled to $10 a month. After looking at the Starlink pricing page, I also noticed a strange disconnect between the residential and the roaming plans, and I suspect SpaceX is hoping that you don't notice it. The only practical roaming plan for full-time travelers is the $175 a month plan that gives you unlimited data and speed. But if you happen to glance at the other column on the pricing page, you'll notice that residential customers can get unlimited internet for just $55 a month with a 100 megabit per second speed cap. That is an insane price discrepancy that I just can't find any justification for. All hope is not lost though. Depending on where your travels take you, there are a few good alternatives to the Starlink Mini. Obviously, the easiest solution is just to use your phone as a hotspot and then connect your other devices to it. As long as you don't need to have a constant Wi-Fi signal in your RV or van, then this solution is also the cheapest because you're probably already paying for a cell phone plan. The only downside to using your phone as a hotspot is that a lot of US mobile companies have decided to reinvent the meaning of basic words in English. In this case, the word unlimited means something completely different to a Verizon or T-Mobile CEO than it does to you and me. To a cell phone company, unlimited simply means that you can use as much data as you want until you reach your cap, or they decide to throttle the speed to the point that your connection is now useless. To their credit, you do get an unlimited amount of data at that useless speed. The only truly unlimited mobile hotspot internet solution, that's quite the mouthful, that I've been able to find in the US is through a nonprofit called Calix. I've not had the chance to test them myself, but their approach is quite interesting. As a way of getting donations, they offer different membership levels. If you opt for the Sprout membership level, then you'll get a bona fide unlimited data SIM card that uses the T-Mobile network. The cost of the membership is $500 a year if you pay it all at once, which essentially means that your cost is less than $42 a month for unlimited internet. Armed with that SIM card, you've now got 2 options for creating a Wi-Fi network in your RV or campervan. But before we get to those options, make sure that you subscribe for more brutally honest tips that'll help you save money and time. Your first option is to buy a mobile hotspot device. You'll find several models online at different price points and different quality levels. You can also buy a hotspot through Calix, which compared to the Netgear models that most tech reviewers seem to recommend, are a pretty good value at $250. You simply insert your SIM card into the hotspot device and then you have a Wi-Fi router. This works pretty well, and the connection will be better than just using your phone, especially if you need to connect more than 1 or 2 devices, or if you want to have a permanent Wi-Fi setup. This can be a great option if you've got a security camera in your van and you want to keep an eye on your pets, or even if you just want to make sure that nobody's breaking into your van. A mobile hotspot is, however, going to be just as limited as your cell phone is when it comes to getting a cell signal. So it's not going to help you if you're in an area with poor cell reception. This leads us to your next option, which is installing a signal booster system on your van or RV. Until the advent of Starlink, these systems were all the rage. The biggest name in that space is probably WeBoost, But there's also another company called HiBoost that offers largely the same product. Regardless of which company you go with, their systems essentially consist of three elements. There's an external antenna, a router/signal booster, and then an internal antenna to give you the best coverage inside of your van or RV. The biggest differentiator here compared to a hotspot device is the external antenna. This is what allows you to receive a cell signal even when your phone shows no bars or 1 bar. These signal booster packages are not cheap though, with WeBoost charging $550 for their Drive Reach Overland system and HiBoost charging $460 for their most complete RV solution. Instead of paying for a complete solution from WeBoost or HiBoost, you could also create your own DIY signal booster. The most important part is buying a good omnidirectional antenna to sit on your roof. This is what will boost the signal compared to what your cell phone can receive. This antenna is then connected to a 4/5G router that can run on 12 volt and sits inside of your RV. The router holds the SIM card that enables you to connect to the cell network, and it also creates the Wi-Fi signal for your van. Depending on how far away the nearest cell tower is, this DIY solution might just give you enough of a boost. Just bear in mind that if you're setting up a signal booster system, regardless of whether you buy it or build it, you will still need to add a data SIM card in order to get internet when you're camping. The best way to determine whether Starlink is worth it for the travel that you do is by looking at the cell coverage map from your network provider. Since the Calix data SIM uses T-Mobile's network, let's take a look at their map. As you can tell from the map, coverage is actually surprisingly good. Obviously, as you move out west, you get some bigger pockets without coverage, as these states just aren't as densely populated as the rest of the country. Alaska is also fairly sparse outside of the cities when it comes to cell coverage. But apart from Alaska, you could really travel the entire country and only rarely be without cell coverage, especially if you have a signal booster. Just bear in mind that, as the name suggests, these devices need a signal to boost in the first place. So if you're hundreds of miles away from a cell tower and you need internet, then Starlink is really your only option. The other downside of signal boosters is that the antenna needs to sit quite high in order to get a good signal. If you're driving an RV or a van that's already quite tall, then you really don't want to add more height in case a low branch breaks off your booster antenna. You can get antenna models that fold away, but then you don't have any signal boosting when you're driving. In contrast, even a roof-mounted Starlink sits flat against your roof, and it's not any taller than a fan cover. So with a Starlink, you could have a signal even when you're driving and there's no cell signal. The last Starlink alternative is just to go old school and make do without the internet for a few days when you're traveling remotely. In fact, it might even be good for your mental health. If you still want to watch movies or TV shows, you can just download them from the different streaming services. But if you're anything like me, you're probably getting sick of the streaming companies removing content and raising their prices every single year. So the best alternative is just to go really old school and buy the shows or movies you want on Blu-ray or DVD. Before you rush out to spend your money on a Starlink dish in anticipation of remote adventures into areas where there's no cell coverage, we need to talk about where Starlink does and doesn't work. We recently spent a few months traveling around Australia, including a month traversing the outback as we traveled through the center of Australia. With huge vistas and a seemingly endless view of desert shrubs, this is the type of landscape that Starlink excels in. Even with the Starlink Mini dish just sitting in the windshield, we were able to be connected to the internet, apply for the permits we needed to travel across Aboriginal land, and of course watch a quick show before climbing into our tent for the night. Since we spent almost 4 days without any cell signal, it's pretty safe to say that a signal booster would have been absolutely useless during those days. However, before we reached the outback, we actually had several days where the Starlink was useless since we were camped in the middle of a eucalyptus forest with only a few gaps in the crown. Since Starlink relies on satellites, it has to be able to see them in order to function. If there's too many trees in the way, then you either get no signal or a very intermittent signal that drops out constantly as you have to wait for the next satellite to come into range. On this note, you'll also find that in heavy rain or snowstorms, the dish will struggle to get a signal because the cloud cover is too dense. SpaceX have released an update to try and combat this problem, but all it did was enable the dish to reconnect to the next available satellite a little bit faster in order to try and make up for any obstacles. Don't get me wrong, that's a nice update, but it's not physics defying. And I can tell you from experience that even just a few big tree branches in the way will have a significant impact on how the dish performs. If you've got any questions about using the Starlink Mini, let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer every single one. If you're planning on traveling internationally with your RV or camper, you might think that Starlink Mini is the ideal solution since it doesn't have any roaming restrictions. This is a topic that we've got plenty of experience with. After we built out our first European van, we traveled all the way from northern Sweden to Turkey and Georgia. We visited remote villages, drove across mountain ranges, and just had an incredible trip. Even though we were traveling across multiple countries, we had no issue using our phones as hotspots and just using local SIM cards. So, if you're traveling in Europe, Starlink is more of a luxury than a necessity. If you're planning on heading to Mexico, a lot of cell phone plans in the US will include some roaming in Mexico. If you've got a router or a hotspot set up, you can also find plenty of local options to buy a SIM card. Depending on where in Mexico you're visiting, you'll find that the country is quite densely populated. So really, in most places, you should be able to get a signal. Canada is a bit of a different story, and it might actually be the country where Starlink makes the most sense. If you look at cell coverage maps for Canada, they're extremely limited outside of the major cities. So if you're planning a road trip to Northern Ontario or Quebec, you'll definitely need something more than just your cell phone if you want to have any hopes of being connected. If you're only using your Starlink Mini occasionally, but you don't want to go through the hassle of canceling and reactivating it every time you want to use it, then you're going to have to pay for standby mode. After the recent price hike, that now costs you $10 a month. The only silver lining, considering that pausing used to be free, is that in standby mode, your dish is still connected to the network, but at a very low speed. Specifically, you can get around 500 kilobytes per second of speed. That's not going to be enough for anything meaningful, but it is enough to stream footage from a security camera, for example, or load directions in Google Maps, although very slowly. Starlink also recently changed the terms of the standby mode so that you can no longer use it in motion. The only real benefit of the very slow standby connection is that you can change from standby mode to a roaming plan without needing a cell signal. Let me know in the comments if you find the standby mode useful. If you know that you're going to need a Starlink Mini for the type of travel that you plan on doing, then you also need to think about how you're going to power it. Out of the box, the Mini only comes with an AC-DC adapter and a very long DC cable. But that's not very helpful for most RV and camper setups that rely on 12 volts. The easiest way to power your Starlink Mini dish in a 12 volt setup is to use a cigarette lighter adapter that can put out at least 65 watts. And then you'll also need a DC to USB-C cable. For the adapter, we bought this one from Ukraine and we used it to power our Starlink Mini during a trip around Australia, and it worked flawlessly. The benefit of this specific adapter is that it can actually put out up to 100 watts, which means that it's also powerful enough to charge a MacBook Pro laptop. If you're setting up a budget 12 volt system, then this little adapter can actually save you from having to buy and set up an inverter system just to power your laptop. For the DC to USB-C cable, you just want to make sure that the joints are protected, as that's where most cables will break. And you also want to make sure that the cable is long enough to match where you want to mount your Starlink Mini. For example, if you're mounting it on your roof and it has to go all the way down to your power supply system, well, you need to make sure that it can span at least 2 odd meters. If you don't want to permanently mount your Starlink, you can also just place it against the inside of the windshield and then plug your adapter into any 12 volt outlet in the front of your car. This is what we did for our lap around Australia, and it actually worked great. Looking into the future, you might be hoping that there's some groundbreaking technology on the horizon that'll increase competition and make affordable internet available to everyone. Well, there are technically already competitors on the market, but they're all using technology from the 70s that's quite limited in comparison to Starlink. The closest future competitor is Amazon, which has announced their Amazon Leo. Amazon Leo's aim is also to have thousands of satellites in a low Earth orbit, hence the name. Leo's technical solution is going to be slightly different from what Starlink has done though, in order to create better coverage with fewer satellites. However, they've only just completed the proof of concept phase, and they now have to successfully build out their satellite infrastructure before they can actually launch an internet service. Given the hefty price tag of $175 a month, is Starlink really worth adding to your travel kit? Well, we've had this dish for almost 3 years now, and it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. When we did a lap of Australia, it was a huge help having Starlink because so much of the country is remote. Even when driving along major highways through the outback, it wasn't unusual to be without cell reception for several days at a time. However, when traveling around Europe, it's pretty hard to justify a Starlink subscription. There are plenty of prepaid, unlimited data cell phone plans to choose from, and because the continent is so densely populated, you rarely get huge areas without cell reception. But if you're planning on spending a lot of time in remote areas of the Western US, Northern Canada, or even traveling outside the major cities in Australia, then the Starlink is a really valuable tool. If that's not the type of travel that you're planning on doing, then you're honestly better off not buying the Starlink Mini and using the savings to build up your Blu-ray collection instead. For more unique and brutally honest tips that'll help you save both money and time, check out our latest video here.